They celebrated Madison's birthday while I was still packing up my husband's ashes. Comment 1 if you've ever lost a loved one and feel connected to the story you're about to hear. Comment 2 if your family has ever taken what was rightfully yours. They celebrated Madison's birthday while I was still packing up my husband's ashes. The box they gave me wasn't much bigger than a loaf of bread, but it weighed the air down like a wrecking ball. I stared at the label. Mark Carter. Cremated remains. April 9th, 2023. My hands didn't tremble. They'd already done enough of that during the funeral, alone. It wasn't the absence of Madison's hug that stunned me, or the lack of eye contact from Logan. It was the empty chair. Mark had asked me to reserve that seat, just in case they show up. They didn't, but I still left the chair there, foolishly believing grief had a way of summoning decency. Now, just one day later, their smiles bloomed all over social media. Champagne flutes raised high, a silver Happy Birthday Mads balloon reflecting the warm lighting of a cozy restaurant in Hillsborough. Sharon's caption read, "Celebrating life, because time is short and love is precious." I stared at the screen. My tea had gone cold. The apartment was silent, save for the ticking wall clock and the occasional hiss from the radiator. I had my hands wrapped around Mark's mug, not because it warmed me, but because it still smelled faintly of his aftershave and chamomile. My phone rang. It was Sharon. I let it go to voicemail, then played it immediately. "Natalie, honey, I hope you're taking care of yourself. We felt it was important to keep Madison's spirits up. You know how fragile she is. But we all missed you last night. Hope you're feeling okay." Not once had she said Mark's name. I went to the hallway closet and pulled out the box. Mark's things were packed with military neatness. He would have hated seeing it in disarray. His watch, a tie he wore to our engagement dinner, a dog-eared copy of the Brothers Karamazov. I held the sweater he always wore on rainy days, brought it to my face, and closed my eyes. I expected tears. None came. Just pressure, like someone was sitting on my chest. I sat down on the floor, the voicemail still playing in my head. "We all missed you last night." They'd posted photos with hashtags: smiles, wine, fake eyelashes, Madison in a white romper. I noticed something. Mark's dog tag, hanging from her wrist like a charm bracelet. She had asked for something sentimental for her big day. I had said no. Clearly, someone else said yes. I stood, walked to the kitchen, and poured the cold tea down the sink. Then I opened the freezer and pulled out the meal I had planned to cook for Mark on our anniversary. He died 4 days before it. I placed it on the counter. Let it thaw. I wasn't going to eat it. I just needed something to remind me that plans once existed. Evening fell fast. I kept the lights low. The curtains were drawn, but I hadn't moved the armchair Mark always used. I sat in it and stared at nothing. I opened my phone again. The voicemail Mark had left 2 hours before he collapsed was still there. I'd never played it. Not once. My thumb hovered. I imagined his voice. Steady, low, always with a smile underneath. Instead, I opened the Photos app. There was a picture of him holding a folder. He had labeled it "in case." I remembered laughing at him. That's morbid. He had just shrugged. "So's life." The phone buzzed. A text from Logan. "Hey Nat, just thinking of you. Let us know if you need anything." I didn't respond. Then came the knock on the door. I flinched. Not from fear, just shock. No one had come by in days. It was the building manager. "A courier dropped this off for you, Ms. Carter." It was a plain envelope. Inside, a business card. Jacob Ellison, attorney at law. A note scribbled on the back. "We need to discuss Mark Carter's estate." Privately. They mourned my bank account more than they mourned my husband. That thought hit me like a punch while I stared at the message from Logan on my phone. "Hey, cousin. Hate to ask, but rent's hit me hard this month. Could you spot me $2,000? Just until May. You know I'm good for it." No mention of Mark. No, "I'm sorry." No, "How are you holding up?" Just money. Again. I sat by the window, rain tapping steadily against the glass. It had been 3 days since the funeral, and still the apartment felt like it had paused in time. Mark's jacket remained slung over the back of the chair. His toothbrush sat in the bathroom cup like it was waiting for him. But I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't even sad. Not in the way I had been. Something colder had started to settle in. A quiet realization that grief was not the only weight I was carrying. Mark had once told me, half joking over a glass of wine, "Keep records. Love doesn't always leave a paper trail, but deceit usually does." I remember laughing. Now, the memory didn't make me smile. It made me curious. The meeting with Jacob Ellison was brief and clinical, the kind of quiet that says, "This conversation will change things." We met at a quiet cafe tucked into the corner of downtown Portland. He arrived with a closed leather folder and eyes that didn't linger. Mark amended his will. He said without preamble, 3 days before he passed. I blinked. Why? I believe he wanted to make things simple. He removed all previous secondary beneficiaries. The entirety of the estate goes to you, Natalie. I didn't say anything at first. I looked out the rain-streaked window as a woman with a red umbrella hurried by. Did he leave a reason? Jacob hesitated, then handed me an envelope. He didn't leave a letter, but I believe this may help. Inside was a copy of the amended document. Clean, firm language. No ambiguity. My name alone. The legal finality of it was comforting in a way I couldn't explain. I got home that evening and stood for a long time in Mark's old office, where I hadn't gone since the night he collapsed. His desk still smelled faintly of cedar and ink. I remembered the way he would sit there, hunched slightly, murmuring to himself while jotting notes. He once called it his quiet place. I ran my fingers along the drawers. The bottom one stuck. I pulled harder. Locked. The key wasn't in its usual place, but then I remembered the small porcelain jar he kept on the bookshelf. I twisted the lid off, and there it was. Tiny. Simple. Gold. I slid it into the lock and turned. Inside was a single leather-bound notebook. The title written in his handwriting, neat and deliberate. Repayment Not Expected. I sat on the floor and opened it. Each page listed a name, a date, an amount, and a short description. $2,400, Madison, emergency vet bill. $3,500, Sharon, credit card fraud. $1,800, Logan. Moving costs after breakup. No repayment schedules? No interest. Just lines. Dates. Kindness. But what caught my eye wasn't the numbers. It was the annotations beside them. Cross-referenced with things I remembered. Madison had posted photos from a resort that same weekend she said her dog was sick. Sharon had been tagged at a luxury wine tasting on the day she claimed her card had been hacked. Logan's breakup coincided with him showing off his new PlayStation online. I opened my laptop, pulled up the Instagram screenshots, dragged them into a folder. I began printing one by one. Each page that came out felt like peeling back a layer of skin I didn't know I had. Not grief. Something tighter. Anger that didn't shout. It just sat, deep and deliberate. I made a new folder, labeled it, For Friday. I didn't know yet what I'd do with it, but I knew I needed to be ready. That night I skipped dinner. I lit a candle Mark used to love, cedarwood and sage. I placed the notebook beside me and flipped to a blank page. At the top I wrote, Tally of the Forgotten. And beneath it, I began listing the debts. Not financial, but emotional. $100 for every apology never given. $500 for every time they laughed without asking if I was okay. $1,000 for choosing brunch over my grief. My phone buzzed. A new email. Subject line, quick question. I opened it. Hey, Nat, just wondering if Mark leaves anything for me in the will. No pressure, Madison. They still laugh like they're the good ones. That was my first thought when I walked into the dining room. The chandelier above the long walnut table sparkled too much. The silverware was laid out like a magazine spread, and the air reeked of something citrusy and forced. like someone had tried too hard to scrub guilt out of the room. Sharon was already pouring wine. Her smile widened the moment she saw me, but her eyes didn't match it. "Natalie, you made it. We weren't sure you'd come." I stepped forward, kissed her cheek lightly, and let my coat slide off. I wouldn't miss it. Madison appeared beside her, holding a wine glass like it was a prop. "Wow. All black? Very chic. Very courtroom." "I'm in mourning," I said simply, and took a seat. Logan gave me a slight nod from across the table. He hadn't touched his drink yet, just kept folding and refolding his napkin. His eyes kept flicking toward me, then away, like I was a question he couldn't answer. They filled the room with polite noise. Chatter about spring plans, Sharon's garden, some nonsense about Logan's new freelance opportunity, which was code for still jobless. I didn't speak unless directly asked. I let them talk. Eventually, they raised their glasses. "To Mark," Sharon said, her voice warm. "He would have loved this." Madison giggled. "He'd also love to know we're all still together, like a real family." I raised my glass but didn't sip. "Do you think he'll be mentioned tomorrow?" Madison asked, eyes dancing behind her lashes. "Like in the will?" "I mean, obviously he will, but, Mark always wanted things to be fair." There it was. I placed my wine glass down carefully, reached into my bag, and pulled out the folder. It was thick, white, edges crisp. I set it down in the middle of the table, perfectly aligned with the placemats. Nobody moved. I took a long, unhurried sip of tea. Madison stared at the folder like it might explode. Sharon cleared her throat. "What's that?" I looked up, my voice calm and smooth. "A reminder. For tomorrow." No one spoke after that. The sounds of forks and knives softened, then stopped. The only audible thing was the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Even the smell of garlic bread seemed to fade. Madison's hand trembled slightly as she picked up her phone. Her thumb danced across the screen with a little too much urgency. Logan kept folding that damn napkin, now with both hands. Sharon smiled, too tightly, and said something about the weather. I stood slowly. "Thank you for dinner." "You're leaving?" Sharon asked, her tone rising just enough. "I've said what I needed to." I walked through the hallway with steady steps, letting my heels echo against the floor. Just before I reached the door, I pulled my phone from my coat pocket and hit play. If they ask about Madison, don't lie for her. You've already done enough. They didn't show up to mourn, but today, they all arrived early. The waiting room outside Jacob Ellison's office smelled like furniture polish and nerves. I sat in a leather chair by the window, watching my family trickle in one by one. Sharon wore pearls and a stiff smile. Madison had on a pastel blazer and heels too tall for someone claiming grief. Logan looked like someone had dragged him here with a leash. Shirt untucked, eyes flickering between exits. No one spoke to me at first. Madison eventually broke the silence. "You look well," she said, too brightly. "Sleep's important. I haven't gotten any lately. Grief messes with your body." I nodded without looking at her. "It does." She didn't push further. At exactly 10, Jacob opened the door to his office. "We're ready." They filed in like guests to a private screening, hopeful, hushed, and hungry for confirmation. I walked last, taking the seat nearest the window, just like Mark always did during our meetings here. The wood-paneled boardroom had no family portraits, no comforting signs of familiarity. It was a room built for decisions, not love. Jacob stood at the head of the table, his fingers interlaced, expression unreadable. "Thank you all for coming. I'll be brief." Sharon smiled faintly. Mark was always private. This must have been hard for him. Jacob nodded but didn't respond. 3 days before his passing, Mr. Mark Carter signed a revised will. That is the only legally recognized version at this time. Madison leaned forward slightly. 3 days before? "Yes," Jacob confirmed. It supersedes all prior arrangements. They looked at each other. I didn't move. He continued, eyes on the document. Mark Carter's estate includes his condo, primary bank accounts, investment portfolios, and several insurance policies. As per the revised will, 100% of these assets are to be transferred to his legal spouse, Natalie Carter. There are no secondary beneficiaries. For a moment, the room didn't breathe. Then Sharon spoke, her voice cracking through the silence. I'm sorry, did you say 100%? Jacob nodded. Yes, all assets. Sole beneficiary, Natalie Carter. Madison laughed. Short, sharp. That's insane. Mark would never. Jacob reached into a folder and pulled out a small flash drive. There's more. Mark requested I play a statement should there be any contestation. He inserted the drive into the monitor at the end of the table. The screen flickered, then sharpened into the face I had both longed for and feared seeing. Mark. He wore a navy sweater, sat against our old bookshelf, and looked straight into the camera with the same calm he used when settling an argument. If you're watching this, he began, and you didn't attend my funeral, I've made the right decision. Sharon shifted, her face tight. Logan looked down. Madison opened her mouth, then closed it. I didn't write this out of malice, Mark said. But I've seen how easily people rewrite the truth when no one's watching. So I've left this record. His tone was steady, unapologetic. I made this choice because Natalie stood by me. Not when it was easy, but when it was thankless. When others came with hands out and vanished when they were empty. I made mistakes, thinking people would repay grace with grace. They didn't. But Natalie never asked for anything except honesty. His eyes darkened slightly, like a storm cloud rolling through. If anyone watching this thinks they're owed something, ask yourself what you gave, not what you expected. The video paused, then flickered back to life as if he had recorded a separate message. And Natalie, if Madison tries to dispute this, play the next file. They called me cold. So I brought the receipts. The room hadn't moved. Mark's face had disappeared from the screen, but his words still hovered. Like dust unsettled, too heavy to ignore. No one had stood. No one had spoken. Jacob sat back down, composed as ever. And me? I was only just getting started. I reached into my bag and pulled out a heavy black binder, its spine labeled in silver, debt unspoken. The sound it made landing on the table was soft, but the echo rippled through the wood like a warning shot. Madison narrowed her eyes. What's that supposed to be? I opened the binder without looking at her. Documentation, since memory seems to be in short supply today. I removed 3 folders from inside and slid them down the table, one to each of them. No one reached for theirs at first. So I opened mine. Page 1, I said calmly. March 3rd, 2022. A bank transfer of $9,000 to Madison Carter. Memo. Trauma therapy series. Madison scoffed. I told Mark I needed help. You tagged yourself at the Grand Canyon Wellness Spa 2 days later. I continued, flipping to the next printout. Receipt, deluxe suite, champagne service, 3-night stay. Mark didn't even know until the charge cleared. Her face darkened. That's not illegal. No, I said, but it's revealing. I turned to Sharon. Page 6, October 18th, 2021. $12,300 wired directly to your account claimed as help with medical bills for heart imaging. You said it was urgent. It was, Sharon snapped, her cheeks coloring. I slid the next page across. And yet, here's your credit card statement. $4,800 to Saks Fifth Avenue. $1,200 at a vineyard in Sonoma. Same week. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I didn't pause. Logan, I said, my voice softer now. Page 11. $5,000. You said you were moving after your job fell through. He didn't look at me. I was. You posted a video of your new gaming setup the same week, I replied. Captioned, Upgrade Season. He looked away, eyes fixed on the grain in the table. His jaw clenched, but he said nothing. I breathed in through my nose and reached for the speaker I'd brought. Small, black, silent until I tapped my phone. A voice played through the room, Madison's voice. "She's basically Mark's wallet in a funeral dress." Sharon gasped. Logan looked like he might crawl out of his skin. The clip continued. "She acts all noble, like she's grieving harder than anyone. But let's be honest. She doesn't cry unless there's a camera. Wait till she sees what he didn't leave her." I stopped the recording. The room was ice. Jacob said nothing, his expression unreadable. I folded my hands neatly in front of me. "You didn't just forget me. You funded your life by erasing mine." No one moved. Then Sharon sputtered, "But I'm her mother." "Not today," I said without flinching. Jacob cleared his throat. "There's one final point to address." Everyone turned. "As per an additional clause added by Mr. Carter," Jacob continued, adjusting his glasses, "any individual who knowingly accepted funds under false or misleading pretenses and failed to disclose them is legally disqualified from contesting the will. Due to an additional clause, anyone who took money without declaring it truthfully is disqualified from contesting the will." The more they screamed, the quieter I felt. I hadn't responded to any of them. Not Sharon's letter, not Madison's email laced with passive-aggressive hearts, not Logan's voicemail that started with a stutter and ended with a plea. Their words came like the last flickers of a storm. Desperate, messy, reaching. But I had already stepped into silence. My new apartment sat on the edge of a quiet lake in Washington. The water moved gently, like it was breathing. Wind stirred the pine trees that flanked the shoreline, their needles whispering secrets to one another. The air smelled clean, unsullied by memory. That morning, I found the last of the boxes tucked behind the linen closet. Letters, envelopes, screenshots I had printed. All the messages that came only when they wanted something. I placed them into a small tin box and sealed the lid. I wrote one word on the side with a black marker: Unsent Apologies. Then I slid the box under my bed, not to hide it, but to close the chapter. In the kitchen, I lit a candle. Cedarwood and sage. The same scent Mark had surprised me with 2 birthdays ago. I let the flame steady, watched it bloom in the glass like a slow exhale. It didn't make me sad. It made me whole. The knock on the door was light, followed by a familiar voice. "Delivery from the land of people who still believe in you." I opened it to find Claire Jensen, holding a bouquet of spring flowers in a paper bag that smelled suspiciously like fresh lemon scones. "You made it," I said, stepping aside. She handed me the bag. "You think I'd skip your first peaceful morning in years?" We sat by the window, our mugs steaming between us. She looked around the apartment with eyes that saw everything. The clean corners, the soft blue walls, the absence of ghosts. "You chose well," she said. "This place breathes." I needed air. She sipped her tea. "There's a nonprofit in Seattle. Supports widows rebuilding their lives. They're looking for mentors and donors." I smiled. I might know one. I opened my laptop. The folder labeled Second Light blinked on the desktop. I clicked it open, filled out the form to start a fund in Mark's name. Mark's Second Light Fund. Not because he needed a monument, but because someone had to turn grief into something that could grow. The mail arrived as Claire left. Among the flyers and welcome packets was a slim envelope, no return address. But I knew the stationery. Jacob's. Inside was a single printed page, folded once. The email header read, "Draft saved, never sent." It was from Mark. "I gave them money because I pitied them. I gave you everything because I trusted you." I didn't cry. I read it again, let the words settle in my chest, then folded the paper carefully and slipped it between the pages of my notebook. Not as proof, just as peace. That evening, I walked down the gravel path to the lake. My feet crunched gently with each step. The wind threaded through my hair, lifting strands off my shoulders. I didn't bring my phone. I didn't need it. The lake shimmered, catching the last light of the day, and I walked, slow and certain, until I reached the edge. I breathed in. Deep, cold, alive. Then I kept walking. Natalie walks out to the lake, wind in her hair, no phone in her hand. She doesn't look back. The lake was still. I stood there long after the wind settled, watching the water ripple in faint circles where a bird had dipped moments earlier. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. It was the kind of silence that comes not from absence, but from release. Behind me, the world I had known was trying to rebuild its scaffolding. Sharon had sent another letter. 3 pages, more emotional than before. Words like, "I never stopped loving you," and "We were just confused." Madison had gone quiet after her lawyer confirmed there was no loophole. Logan's last voicemail had ended with, "I guess you're really done with us." I was, but not with living. The next morning, I opened my inbox to an unexpected email. Subject line, "Approved." The nonprofit had accepted the fund application. Mark's Second Light Fund was now official, listed among verified partners. By noon, I was on a video call with a woman named Eva. Mid-30s, widow, 2 kids. She looked exhausted, but her voice didn't shake. She talked about trying to go back to work, how finances were tight, how people offered sympathy but never help. "I don't know if I'm doing it right," she said. "I just don't want to feel like I'm disappearing." "You're not," I replied. "I promise you're not." After the call, I sat back and let the sunlight spill across the table. I imagined Mark watching from wherever peace finally found him. He would have smiled at Eva. He always noticed the people no one else looked at. I took out the tin box from under the bed. Unsent Apologies. I placed it on the floor, opened it one last time. Then I reached for the matches and lit a small flame in the fireplace. I fed each letter into it, slowly, carefully, like a ritual. Not in anger, just closure. One by one, they curled, darkened, and vanished. By sunset, the ash had cooled. I wrote a new name on the tin box, proof I lived. Then I slid it onto the shelf next to the candle. Outside, the lake mirrored the dusky sky. Inside, I finally felt no need to explain myself. I didn't win by fighting them. I won by walking away. They came for the money but stayed for the silence. Because nothing is louder than being exposed by the truth you thought no one kept. Natalie didn't need to shout, beg, or avenge herself with cruelty. She simply revealed what they had done, and then walked away, carrying nothing but her peace. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but once heard, it resonates for a lifetime. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If you felt every moment of this story, drop a 1 in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind us, silence isn't weakness. It's the moment before the world hears your truth.